Hi BookTube, it's Amy, and as you may know, I've been reading my way through Marcel Proust's massive novel, In Search of Lost Time. Now, I'm currently on the third volume, The Guermantes Way, but as I read through this massive, beautiful work, I've decided to also take the time to read some additional literature written about Proust, which I hope will give me insight into the novel itself, but also into his life, because as I read authors that I love, I do like to learn a bit about them. And so I had an Audible credit, went on the app there and searched Proust, and I picked out one book that I found interesting, and it was fairly short. So I did end up listening to it yesterday and today, and it's kind of a curiosity of a work. I'm not really sure which genre to put it in. It's part philosophy slash self-help manual, partly literary analysis, and also a little bit biography as well. Now, the title is How Proust Can Change Your Life, and it's by Alain de Botton, and it was published in 1997. Now, I had never heard of Alain de Botton before, so I gave him a quick Google and discovered that he is a Swiss-born British philosopher. And I found this out after I read the work, which is why it made sense to me suddenly that part of it was coming across as philosophy. This is more than biography, it's more than a literary analysis. It's also part philosophy, which makes for quite a curious work. It also makes for almost a problematic work, because as I was reading, I had to ask myself, how accurate is this interpretation? Do we want to take as truth, take as fact, take as accurate an interpretation of Proust's text that relies in part on the life of Proust, on the biographical facts that the author is pulling from here, that's also mixed in with philosophy, and how comfortable are we talking about Proust's life, claiming this is the way Proust thought, based on his literary text. So that's something to think about. Now, I can understand why some people would say that this is all right, because it is generally understood by many readers and scholars alike that In Search of Lost Time is at least in part, if not largely, autobiographical. Proust drew from his own life extensively to write In Search of Lost Time, and a lot of people understand the unnamed narrator to be Proust himself, or a version of Proust. And so a lot of people would have no problem with a literary analysis and a biography that is, intermingled and draws from each other. Also, this was an audiobook, so I wasn't getting any sources, any footnotes. Perhaps if I had read a physical text, I would have been slightly more comfortable with this work and with the conclusions that the author comes to, just because, Alain de Botton is throwing out certain facts about Proust's life, and I'm listening to this audiobook and wondering, where is this sourced from? And it's funny because I had written, as I was taking some notes in a Word document as I was listening, I had written down, did he publish his letters? Are the letters of Proust published? Is this perhaps where this author, Alain de Botton, is getting a lot of, these facts and this insight from? And so I was going to look into that, but I was in a bookstore, used bookstore this afternoon after work, and there on the shelf, 2 volumes of Proust's letters. Now I didn't buy them because they were 20 bucks each, and $40 on a couple of massive volumes of letters. I gave them a quick flip through, and the letters didn't seem particularly interesting. There were letters to his mother, like, this is what I ate today, this is how my health is doing, or letters to ladies in society, I'm sorry I missed you, let me flatter you, that sort of thing. And I'm not that involved in Proust's personal life that I want to dig into those. Also, I've still got 3 whole volumes of In Search of Lost Time. So I did pass on those. But anyway, so we've got this work here called How Proust Can Change Your Life. And Alain de Botton is offering us advice while also interpreting the text for us and drawing parallels between Proust's life, the text, to ultimately come to conclusions and advice for us. And I wanted to take a moment to discuss a couple of key ideas, some interesting things to think about that came out of this book that I listened to today. Now, Alain de Botton, he talks on everything from how to read to the nature of writing and art, death, friendship, pain, so on and so forth. I've got, it's unusual for me, but I was at a computer while I was listening, so I've got like 6 pages of notes here, which is odd. But what I wanted to talk about here is sentence length. So Botton makes an interesting comment about the length of Proust's sentences. And this is not a particularly philosophical comment, it's more of a comment about art in general, kind of a passing comment. So Proust is known for his very long, elaborate sentences, to the point that a bunch of publishers turned him down because they just couldn't understand why he was writing such long sentences, why he spends 14 or 15 pages writing about a man lying in bed and rolling over, why some pages are filled with sentences that go on for 40 or 50 lines. It was just not something that publishers had ever seen before, and so Proust ended up putting forth the money to actually publish the first volume himself, or so Botton says here in his book. I'll take his word for it, as he seems to be a well-respected, abundantly published author. So I'm assuming that, what he's telling me here is backed up by proof, by primary sources, by at least secondary sources that he's read. So I'm going on that and assuming that what I'm reading here is correct. I got past a publisher, so Proust is famous for these very long sentences, to the point that some people don't like Proust because they say that his sentences are just too long. And so Botton kind of poses a question here in passing. Is there such thing in art as a sentence that is too long? Is there a convention that should not be broken? Has Proust broken a convention, or is Proust the exception? So personally, I love these long sentences. It's something that I really enjoy reading, but I don't think very many authors can pull it off the way that Proust does. But I think in Proust's case, it's all right. I'm just not sure I would want to see it anywhere else because I feel as though it wouldn't live up to what Proust has done. So I feel as though there is, an unspoken convention of sentence length. And that's something I kind of wanted to pose to you in the community, perhaps if you're reading Proust as well or you have read him. Do you think that Proust is an exception, or will it work equally as well for other authors to, write in this unusual style? So there's that. There's sentence length. And then there's something that I've heard talked about elsewhere in terms of Proust's work. In his perception of art, it's not the subject that matters. It's the treatment of the subject that is the art. So I found that very interesting as well, and Alain de Botton really gets into this later, talking about, what does he call it? Turning authors into idols. So he's talking about the adulterous reverence that we often hold for authors. We idolize the subject matter rather than the treatment of it. And from this, from his perception of the way that Proust viewed art, and from his own interpretation of Proust, Botton comes forward with this idea of how to truly, give credit to and pay reverence to an author we love. He says that if we truly love Proust, we won't go to Cambrai, where he grew up, and eat the madeleines, the tea cakes, because that's not where we're going to find the spirit of Proust's writing, the spirit of his art. Proust could have just as easily have written about any other town. It's not the location, it's not the tea cakes that matter. Rather, it is the way that Proust perceived the tea cakes, perceived the town that is important. So if we truly want to pay credit to Proust, if we want to, I'm losing my words here, if we love Proust, then we are not going to grab some tea cakes or go to Cambrai. We are going to look at perhaps things that he never had the chance to encounter, but we are going to try to look at them in a Proustian way. And I'd certainly like to discuss this more, which I think I'll do in maybe a second video on this work later on tomorrow, when my mind is in a clearer place and I've had a chance to digest this a little bit more. But so I'm continuing on with my Proust. I've got 150 pages left of The Guermantes Way. I will finish that this weekend, and I might take a short little break before jumping into Volume 4, which is Sodom and Gomorrah, which is sitting behind me on the shelf there. I hope you enjoy your reading.